Hello, everybody. This is personal finance presentation number 2 on zero-based budgeting. So hopefully you've already seen personal finance presentation number 1 entitled Savings Make Sense. Once again, my name is Joel Corey. I'm an associate professor of teaching and economics at UC Riverside. And in this particular presentation, we're going to teach you how to keep track of every dollar with what is known as zero-based budgeting. So with that in mind, there is an Excel spreadsheet that kind of goes along with this presentation that should also be available to you. I'd highly encourage you to save this spreadsheet to your own computer just so that you'll have it forever. There's a lot of people who will pay personal finance consultants money to have access to spreadsheets like this, whereas you're just going to get it as part of this presentation. All right, so what is zero-based budgeting? Well, zero-based budgeting is essentially a type of budgeting where you keep track of every dollar so you know exactly where all of your money went. This is incredibly important, especially if you're paying for things on like a debit card or a credit card where you push your card into the slot, you pull it out and leave the store and you don't know exactly how much you spent. A lot of people can get in trouble that way. So if you are going to use credit cards, again, the big recommendation based off of our first presentation, Savings Make Sense, is to not go into credit card debt. Make sure you pay off those credit cards at the end of the month, every month. Make sure you pay them off on time. But also remember, keep track of what you're spending, because a lot of times you can spend a lot more using a credit card than you can with cash, simply because you don't even look at the number that you're paying when you're putting that card in the slot. Right, so this is going to help you avoid that trap by you keeping track of what you're spending. Remember, one of our tips from the last presentation was don't ever leave the store without knowing exactly how much you paid for something, right? You want to always keep that in mind. Okay, so for example here, if your after-tax take-home pay is $3,474 a month, then we're going to count for all $3,474, right? We're going to know exactly where that was spent or saved throughout the month as part of the zero-based budgeting. So every single dollar you're going to keep track of, and it's not quite as hard as it sounds. Again, if you are paying for things on a credit card, you're going to have that credit card balance at the end of the month. That'll tell you exactly where you spent your money. Again, if you're using cash for things, that's fine, but you might have to take some notes along the way as to where you're spending your money. But that's important to do as well, just so you know exactly where your money is going. You keeping track of your money is going to help keep you from overspending. Right. So with that in mind, once again, an Excel spreadsheet has been provided for you so that you can keep track of all of your expenses. Now, the names of the expenditure categories can be changed to fit your needs. So, for example, if you never spend money on a certain category, say maybe childcare because you don't have children, then you can change that to something else, something that you do spend money on that's maybe not part of that list of potential costs. But the formulas have been locked so that you can enter in numbers without worrying about messing up the format. If you do want to mess with the format, or if you do want to change those formulas, you can. Use the password wealth creation and unlock that particular spreadsheet so that you can then change anything you want in any cell you want. But if you're worried about messing things up, then just leave it locked. And again, you can enter in the numbers that you want in the appropriate spaces without necessarily having to worry about changing or messing up any of the formulas. An instruction guide has also been provided along with this assignment, so you can kind of practice with it on your own. Or if you're a teacher watching this and you use this as an assignment for your students, right, you can use that instruction guide as kind of instructions for them to complete that assignment. And then the Excel file does contain 2 spreadsheets, one for adults in college or the workforce, and then one for high school students, because I realize that a lot of high school students are going to have the same expenditures as somebody may be living out on their own. Right, so I encourage you to become familiar with the over 18 or adult spreadsheet, because that's the one that you're going to be using for most of your life. Having said that, if you are a high school student, say 15 or 16 years old, watching this right now, right, I did create a different separate spreadsheet for you that kind of eliminates a lot of the expenses that you're probably not going to have to worry about until you are out there on your own. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet. So I'm going to exit my PowerPoint screen. So this is a spreadsheet that you should be able to pull up. I went ahead and listed a certain amount in there. Once again, you can enter numbers into any of these spaces except for the ones that already have formulas in there. Those are locked. Again, if you want to unlock it, then you just right click on the spreadsheet, right? You just click on unprotect spreadsheet, and it's going to give you that password. Wealth creation is the password that you enter if you want to unlock or change anything, right? And I have that password listed here below, right? So with that in mind, there is again a set of instructions, right? So zero-based budgeting exercise 1 is a set of instructions, and we're going to kind of follow through those, right? So you can get an idea of how to go about doing this particular assignment, right? So with that in mind, let's go ahead and keep on going through the PowerPoint slides. Oh, sorry, before I do that, remember that if you want the under 18 or the high school spreadsheet, you can find this one here, right? That spreadsheet is, again, a bit different in that it is going to have a lot fewer expenses, right? But still have some of the major ones that you might end up spending some money on, at this point in time in your life. Okay. So moving forward here, right, the average college graduate makes about $52,000 a year in gross pay. Because remember that gross pay is not the amount you get to take home. That's the amount you get paid before taxes, right? We're going to have to subtract some taxes to figure out your net pay, and that is the amount that you're going to get to take home and decide what to do with. What we call in the economics game disposable income. So please also know that the average high school graduate makes $28,000 a year coming out of school and starting their first job. So again, there is some disparity there between college graduates and high school graduates, but these are just averages. There are college graduates who make a lot more, and of course there are college graduates who make a lot less. There are high school graduates who make a lot more, and there's probably high school graduates out there who make a lot less as well, right? So again, these are just averages. So you can either use these amounts or determine a gross pay based off of the profession you prefer to enter. And if you want to kind of figure out what that gross pay might be, then you can check out the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Outlook Handbook, right, which you can find using this link here. Let's go ahead and pull that up real quick just so you know how to navigate it, right? So if you go to the Occupational Outlook Handbook, right, you're going to be able to browse occupations seen by the highest paying, the fastest growing, or most new jobs, at least projected. If you already kind of have an idea of what you want to do, like if you decide you want to work in architecture or engineering, then you can click on that, and again, it'll give you what's known as the median pay, median being the number that appears kind of right in the middle. And so you can kind of see how much each profession gets paid there, as well as the entry level of education required for that particular profession. And again, you can kind of break it down further. So like if you want to be a chemical engineer, click on chemical engineer, right? And again, this is their median pay broken down per hour, right? Again, the degree required, amount of experience required, and on-the-job training required, right? Number of jobs, and also the job outlook, right? So it's about a 6% growth rate for this job, which is right around the average according to most jobs across the country, right? And so again, you can kind of use that to determine maybe what kind of profession you are thinking about entering, and again, what you could expect your gross pay to be if you were to enter into those professions, right? So you can definitely check that out, and from there, make maybe a more informed decision about what you would want your gross pay to be. But right now, we're just going to go with the national average for college graduate, which is $52,000. Right. Now, once you've determined your gross salary, then you need to figure out your after-tax income. And this will depend on the current tax laws as well as which state you live in, as some states tend to have higher income taxes than others. Right. So again, you can click on this website here, and that will help you figure out what your after-tax income will be. Right. So again, I've already pulled that website up for you. So the household income, again, we're assuming before taxes is $52,000. That's the average college graduate. I'm recording this in Riverside, California, so I'm going to enter that into a location, although you can enter in a state that more reflects the one that you either living in now or plan to live in when you graduate. And again, going with whatever your current status might be, I'd say for most people in high school, that would be single, although if you're married, you can change that as well. And then this breaks down your income taxes, so how much you pay in federal taxes, how much you pay in terms of what we call the FICA, that's your Social Security and Medicare taxes, and then how much you pay in state taxes, and this is the one that's going to change most depending on where you live. So with that in mind, you can calculate out that your total income taxes here is $10,310, which means that you're going to have about $41,690 in after-tax income. So that's your take-home pay, or again, what we call your disposable income that you're then going to be able to put into this budget, right? So again, that's kind of where these numbers are coming from. Should you want to go ahead and again explore some of these on your own. So once you've determined your after-tax disposable income, you're going to divide it by 12 in order to get your monthly pay and enter that into that spreadsheet in that dark pink cell. That is cell B82. And then you divide this number by 2 if you're going to get paid bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks, and enter these amounts into the light pink cells D79 and E79 respectively. Again, this represents your biweekly take-home paycheck. Right, so what we do here is we look at our spreadsheet. So I've already entered that amount going to the adult spreadsheet here of $3,474. That's going to be your monthly pay, right? So we're going to divide that into 2, so that's $1,737 in paycheck 1 at the first of the month. Right, notice that this number automatically updates, right, so that you have another $1,737 that you're going to get paid at the 15th of the month, right? Once you enter that, again, go ahead and make sure you pay attention to this gray cell at the top, right? That's going to update as well, right? So now you have $1,737 to spend for each pay period, or a total of $3,474 to spend for the month, right? So once you enter those in, again, these numbers automatically update for you, right? So again, all the math and all the calculations have already been done, and you can't mess that up because the cells are locked unless, of course, you just feel the need to. If you want to change things around, again, just use that password to unprotect the spreadsheet, and then you can change anything you want. But again, I would save a protected spreadsheet, a copy of it anyway, so that you can always go back to the original should you wish to do so. All right, so with that in mind, now you've got some decisions to make about how you want to spend this particular money. Right, so again, step 1 here is the zero-based budgeting. There is a list of instructions for that, right, where you can fill out your monthly expenses by entering how much you spend in each of the following categories based on what you think is either most accurate for your real life now, or what you think is going to be most accurate when you actually get out there and start making this paycheck. So the first thing you want to do is enter the amount you plan to spend in that category in column B. Notice that this percentage is going to automatically update so you can see if you're within the prescribed range. Right. So for example, if we're going to this list of instructions here that I'm referring to, right, I've already kind of done this first part in terms of the salary information. Right, again, it has all those links to those websites there for you, right? But under housing options, here are a couple options that I've just thrown out there, maybe more based on Riverside, California information, but again, you could put in whatever option is most realistic for you based on where you live. But let's say you want to go with, say, option A, 1-bedroom apartment, 5 minutes from work with nicer amenities. That's going to be $1,100 a month and maybe $150 in utilities. So you go to the spreadsheet here, right, under housing, you have either your mortgage or rent. So this is $1,100 that you're going to put in here, right? Notice that as soon as you enter this in, right, some numbers automatically update for you, right? This 31.66% is the percent of your take-home pay that you are spending on housing. Notice that it is between the 25 to 35% range. Is kind of recommended for how much you should be spending of your paycheck on housing. At least that's our number so far. And then notice this number over here is updated to 1,100 as well. That means that's because you got to allocate it from one of these 2 paychecks, right? So usually you pay your rent at the first of the month. So let's say that this comes from the first paycheck, right? So we put that 1,100 in here, right? Boom, this goes back down to 0. And that's exactly what you want. That's the point of zero-based budgeting, right? So again, you don't need to put anything there, but if you prefer, you can also put a 0 there. It won't change anything. Right, and that's how that money would be spent. Right, also listed here in the instructions that your utilities was going to be $150. A lot of times when you rent an apartment, your utilities are kind of bundled together like that, right? So let's say that all utilities if renting, you put 150. Again, enter that in there. Notice that you're at 4.32%, maybe a little bit less than what the amount should be that you're spending on this, but we have also included other things like cable and internet, or maybe your cell phone. That's probably going to bring you up to within that range. Again, let's say that you pay your utility paycheck towards the end of the month every month, right? Then again, you put the 150 here, and that's what's coming out of the second paycheck, right? Again, notice that these numbers at the top update. This is how much you have left to spend from each paycheck. again, your rent taking a pretty good amount out of that first paycheck, right? So again, with that in mind, you could put a 0 here, or you could leave it alone, right? Either way, you're good to go. Let's talk about something like groceries. Groceries, you're probably not going to spend all at the beginning or at the end of the month, right? Let's say that you average spending maybe $400 a month in groceries, right? Again, that takes you at around 11.51%, which puts you within that normal range there, right? You're probably going to spend maybe half of that at the beginning of the month. So again, you put $200 here. Again, you still have $200 left to allocate from your $400 that are budgeted for groceries, and you can put that in here under your second paycheck. And again, notice that as soon as you enter this in, it's going to drop this total down. That's the amount that you have left to spend from those top cells D3 and E3 respectively, right? So again, this is a good way to kind of keep track of everything that you are spending, so you know exactly where all of your money is going. Right, again, down here at the bottom, these cells are automatically going to update, right? These gray cells here at the bottom next to 0, this is how much you have left to spend from each paycheck, right? This grand total here is how much you're spending from each paycheck, right? Again, this is the total paycheck amount here in the middle in those pink cells, right? So again, you definitely want to be budgeting for some savings, right? You might want to be putting, say, $200 in an emergency fund, right? You might want to put, say, maybe $300 into a retirement fund, right? And you might want to put, say, $100 into your big purchase fund, right? That takes you up to around $600 a month that you are trying to save. And again, you got to figure out which paychecks you're going to save them from. Maybe you want the emergency fund to come from the beginning of the month, just to make sure that you set that aside, right? Maybe you want your retirement fund to be split evenly, right? So you might put $150 from each paycheck automatically deducted to put into that retirement account. And then maybe with the big purchase fund, because you have more money to spend at the end of the month, right, you're probably going to put most of that there, right, from your second paycheck. Right, so again, that's kind of how you'd work this spreadsheet. And again, just to make sure that you can follow it, we have a list of options here. So for example, if you're a college student right now, you can estimate what your student loan payments are going to be based on the national average, right, by using this scale here, right? Again, approximately about 5% interest for a 20-year length of the loan. For car options, we have some additional options there. I left the auto insurance blank because that might depend on how many accidents or tickets you've had, but you can kind of look up what your auto insurance quotes might be. It's always good to make sure that you kind of compare quotes and go with the best value. And then again, just to make sure that you can use the spreadsheet, here are a list of other things that you must budget for as part of this assignment. Again, this is more for teachers who are maybe choosing to use this assignment for their classes, right? But again, just for you, it's probably not a bad idea to develop a budget with some of these things in mind. And then again, we have some more kind of optional things here. I know a lot of people use more streaming services than cable, so you might want to do that instead, right? And again, some things that you can choose to either budget for or not budget for based on what you think your lifestyle might be. For example, pet care. If you plan to have a pet, you definitely want to budget for some pet care there. If you don't plan to have a pet, then that might be something that you can just leave blank or put zeros in if you prefer. Right, and again, here are the instructions for using the spreadsheet. So again, make sure you save this spreadsheet to your computer or a USB drive so you can use it in the future. Also, make sure you save a filled out one here from step 1 because you might need it for step 2 if you choose to do it. Or again, teachers, if you are going to have your students do this, make sure you remind them to save a copy of their completed step 1 spreadsheet because they're going to need it again for step 2. All right. But again, that's kind of how this works. So once you've figured out what you're spending and put that in column B, again, you divide that between your 2 pay periods like we just did, right? Rent's most likely going to come out of the first paycheck, right? Expenditures like groceries are going to be most likely to be split across the other 2 pay periods. And again, make sure that that column F, that's that column there at the end, all in the gray boxes, right? Make sure that these are all zeros, right? That they all balance out, right? That's the idea. At the end, hopefully you want everything to balance or be come out to be equal to 0. And if you have any money left over at the end after looking at all your expenses, then you can always add it to your savings and investment, or you can always choose to give it away if that's something that you feel that, like you want to do, right, under charitable gifts. So again, every dollar should be accounted for. If it's not being spent, then it should definitely be saved, or again, if you prefer, maybe given away in terms of charity. But we definitely want you to account for every dollar here. All right, so again, make sure that those all balance out. Again, notice that as I pointed out, cells D3 and E3 are keeping track of how much you have left from your two paychecks respectively. And then remember that every dollar has to be accounted for. So as I just mentioned, anything left over you want to put into your savings or investments accounts, or if you feel so inclined, you can give to charity. So step 2 is what we call life happens, and this is kind of a modification on this assignment to show you that you do definitely want to be putting money in your emergency account for any kind of crazy scenario that might come up in your life. And for this one, you do or should get a 6-sided die, so just a regular die that you would roll from any Monopoly game or any other board game that you might have. You can get them for less than $1 at a hobby store somewhere. Right, but yeah, just get a 6-sided die, and I want you to roll it twice, or if you have 2 dice, you can just roll them both once, whichever you prefer. And I want you to record the outcome of each roll. So the 2 numbers that you roll are going to correlate to some unlucky scenarios that occurred during the 7th month of using this budget. So for step 2, I want you to pretend or imagine that you've been budgeting using this budget for 6 months. So whatever's in your emergency savings, you have 6 times that. Whatever you put in your retirement account, you have 6 times that, and so forth and so on. Right, and we're going to assume that both these scenarios, the outcomes of both of your roll, are going to happen to you in this 1 month. And so you've got to be able to budget for both scenarios in your 7th month spreadsheet. Right, now, here's kind of a fortunate situation. Let's say that you roll the dice and it comes up 2, and you roll it again and it comes up 2. Right, we're not going to say that you get scenario 2 twice. What we're going to say is that you only have that one scenario to deal with. Right, but if you roll the dice and it comes up 2, and then you roll again and it comes up 4, then you have to deal with both scenarios 2 and 4 in your particular budget for the 7th month. So let's go ahead and take a look at what some of these scenarios are. All right, so again, we're going to open up the instructions here for step 2. And again, it starts off just like we've been saying, assume that you've been budgeting for about 6 months here, right? And during your 7th month, there's going to be some life happens scenarios, right? So scenario 1, your place needs a new roof. So you've been living in your place for 6 months now, it's going fine, but then a major storm caused a tree to fall on your roof. Fortunately, your insurance is going to cover the damage, but you do have to pay the $2,000 deductible, right? So you can either pay the $2,000 up front, or you can get a payment plan and make payments of $200 a month every month for the next year. So that's a total of $2,400 because you do have to pay interest on that. And it tells you what cell you want to enter and the amount that you decide to pay off, right? Texting trauma, basically you're going to the grocery store and you're texting while driving, which you should never do. But let's say it happens, and as a result, you run into the person in front of you and cause a damage to your vehicle. That's going to cost about $1,500, right? So again, if you hopefully you have auto insurance, it's required by law. That's going to help you cover the cost of damage to the other vehicle, but you might have to pay the damage to your own vehicle depending on what kind of coverage you have. So that's $1,500 that in a repair that you're going to have to pay there. Mobilizing mono, this says last month that you contracted mononucleosis and missed 3 weeks of work beyond your sick leave, right? So you do not have disability insurance for this short amount of time, right? It doesn't kick in during the 6-month period, right? So this is going to cost you 3 weeks of pay, which is about $2,605 out of your monthly income. So you're only going to get one paycheck this month for $869. So what's going to happen is you're going to enter 0 under that first biweekly paycheck, and then $869 under that second. So you make those adjustments, and then of course you're going to have to figure out what you're going to cut to make that work, or again, if you've saved enough in the past to make that work. Death in the family is scenario 4. So you found out that a close family member just passed away, and you have to buy a last-minute plane ticket in order to avoid in order to attend the funeral, right? Again, last-minute plane tickets can be pretty expensive, right? So it's going to cost you $1,000, right? So you can put it on your credit card and make the minimum payment of $100, which has a 25% interest rate on anything that you don't pay, or you can pay it off in full and just make the minimum instead of just making that minimum payment. So what are you going to do? And enter the amount you decide to pay off. Too much fun in the sun basically is the idea that you go a little crazy on your vacation and spend way too much putting it on your American Express card, right? And so again, you've got to figure out how much of that you're going to want to pay off and how much of that balance you're going to want to carry at that 30% interest rate. right? And again, figure out if you saved enough to make that work. And then scenario 6, friends in trouble. You have a friend who gets a DUI and they need you to come bail them out of jail, right? Current bail is set at $1,200. Your friend promises to pay you back in the next couple months, but for now, that money has to come out of your account, right? So there is no spot in the budget for bail, although maybe there should be. There's maybe if something you end up paying a lot of, you want to enter into your own spreadsheet, but hopefully that's not something that's going to be frequently coming up. So I said, go ahead and please enter the $1,200 in cell B53, which is a spot for babysitter, since babysitting is essentially what you are doing if you have to bail your friend out for a DUI. Hopefully you'll never come across that scenario, but I actually made all these scenarios based off of things that either I have experienced or my friends have experienced at some point in their life in terms of needing to pay to bail somebody out of jail or needing to pay to fix their roof or their car or something like that, right? So with that in mind, right, again, if you were to roll the dice and the dice come up, say 2 on the first roll, then you got texting trauma. And if it came up 4 on the second roll, then you got death in the family. So both those happen to you in the same month, and you got to figure out how to deal with it. Right. Now, I do have some good news. You remember that you have been saving in your emergency savings account for 6 months, and you are allowed to use this. In fact, this is what your emergency savings account is for, to help you tackle these scenarios. Right. So since you've been using this budget for 6 months, what I'm going to say you're allowed to do is you're allowed to use up to 6 months of your emergency savings and tackle these scenarios. So you multiply your emergency savings in cell B8 by 6, and you enter however much of that you want to use up to the total amount that you have saved into cell B83 under what is known as other source of income, and distribute it as needed across the 2 pay periods. So to kind of show you what I mean here, going back to this spreadsheet, right? So you have $200 is what you've been putting into your emergency fund, right? You can multiply that 200 by 6. That's going to be 1,200, and you can put that under other source of income here, right? Because you're now going to draw upon that savings to help you pay for these scenarios. Right, so notice that when you do that, you have another $1,200 that you need to distribute across your 2 pay periods, right? So let's say that you want to distribute it evenly. If you decide to do that, right, then that's going to be $2,337 in each pay period. Do that again, make sure that it all balances, right? Again, I'll automatically kick you to the top there once you've done it, but you might want to scroll back down and make sure that that comes out to 0, right? So that gives you more money to now spend during this time period and hopefully come tackle those scenarios. All right, if you need to borrow, if this isn't enough and you might need to borrow some money from your parents or take out a loan, right, then you might be able to put those into these, again, other sources of income should you prefer to do so. All right. Students often ask, can I use my emergency fund plus my big purchase fund if I need to draw upon that? I'm going to leave that up to your teacher, right? The one thing I'm going to suggest that you don't do is touch your retirement fund, right? I would not use that for these scenarios simply because, again, there's a huge penalty for taking money out of your retirement fund if you do so before you turn 59 and a half years old. At least that's the law as of this recording, right? So remember, you get tax breaks for putting money in a retirement fund, but you do have to keep your money in there by law until you turn a certain age, right? So I wouldn't touch that money no matter how big that account gets, right? So again, that's kind of the instructions for step 2, right? If you're kind of a student just working through this on your own, right, then you can choose whether or not you feel you want to answer these particular questions. If you are a teacher who is assigning this project, right, and you're looking for a way to kind of grade students on what they did, then these are some suggested questions for you, right? Some of them are scenario based. So for example, students who get scenario 1, 4, and 5, you might want them to answer these questions. Students who don't get that scenario might not have to. You can talk about how do you consider taking care of these kinds of expenses? Did you consider maybe selling something, taking on another job, right? Did you do anything other than cut spending to increase your income to help take care of this short-term situation, right? And then one of the questions that I like here at the end is and again, this is kind of more of an optional, it's more of an extended assignment related to the first assignment, or that saving makes sense as part of presentation 1. But let's say that you have been saving for that retirement for using this budget for 12 months, right? Then I want you to take your retirement fund, multiply it by 12, and use that as your annual addition and plug that into your compound interest calculator to see how much money you have by the time you retire, and see if that's enough. So that's might be one way that you want to go with this. And I think that's what's coming up here on our one of our last slides here. So again, reflect upon the questions at the end. Did you save enough? What sacrifices would you have to make to avoid debt? What are some additional potential solutions to coming up with the money needed to pay for these emergencies without cutting your spending? In other words, again, what kind of additional income might you try to generate and how much you try to generate it? And then again, this is kind of that extra optional question I just mentioned. So one thing you can do is multiply the amount you have in your retirement fund by 12, right, to calculate the annual addition to your retirement account, and then go to this compound interest calculator in order to figure out how much you're going to have by the time you retire. So again, just kind of a quick example of how to do that. So here in cell B9, we've been saving $300 a month. Again, you're going to multiply that by 12, so that comes out to $3,600. That's your annual addition to your retirement fund, right? And then again, we're going to say that you're starting off with $0, right? And that you're going to talk about a 7% interest rate, which is about the average that you can expect over a long-term investment in mutual funds, right? Again, 7 to 8% is about the market average. We'll be conservative and say 7%, right? So again, we're just going to click on this compound interest calculator here, bring this up, right? So your current principal is 0, right? Your annual addition is whatever you have in your retirement account multiplied by 12. Again, we had 300, so multiply that by 12. That gives us 3,600. Right, and then 7% is the interest rate. Now, for years to grow, right, that's going to depend on how old you are. So going back to this, right, again, you're going to take the average retirement age right now is looking like 67, right? So he's going to subtract your age from 67 and enter that in under years to grow. So, for example, if you are, say, 27, right, that would be 40 years to grow. If you are 17, that would be 50 years to grow. Again, this spreadsheet is for somebody who maybe is just getting out of college and starting their job. So we're going to say they're 22, right? So I give it 45 years to grow. So we're going to put 45 here under this years to grow. And then we're going to calculate. And again, that's going to give you $1,100,706, or roughly about that much around the time that you decide to retire at 67. Again, this doesn't include your Social Security payments. Hopefully that's still around by the time that you, me, and everybody else retires. Again, I wouldn't necessarily count on it, depending on what happens with the demographics of this country and a whole bunch of other stuff. Right, but even if you don't have Social Security, you still have at least $1,100,000 saved up here for your retirement. Again, if just based off of what you're budgeting here in this spreadsheet. Right, so again, this is kind of an extra way to see if you've been saving enough for your retirement. In other words, is this enough when you retire? That's going to be up to you, depending on how you decide to live once you retire. Right, but again, it's kind of a way to combine the first lesson with this second lesson here, right? The first lesson being on how to save for your retirement and other things. The second lesson, again, just making sure you know where all your money's going and making sure that you are making a plan to save so that you can be wealthy when you retire. All right, and that's it. That's all I have for you, but that's how you'd go about using this assignment and this spreadsheet. Again, at the very least, I would download this spreadsheet and save it to your computer so that you can use it whenever you want. I would suggest kind of going through these assignments, even if you're a student and these aren't assigned to you, just to make sure that you understand, one, how the spreadsheet works, and two, to kind of get a sense of how much you should be saving for these kinds of things. Right, so if you have any questions about this at all, again, feel free to email me at joab.corey@ucr.edu, and I will do my best to help you. Again, hopefully you're able to use these kinds of tools to get a plan, a good financial plan together, right, and get and stay wealthy. Right, but again, let me know if you need anything, and take care.